This is Mile High.
Do I want to tell the story or do I want to show the message?
You've got a lot of work to do between Mile High.
The time has come where we can know
we have a responsibility, an ethical and moral responsibility.
We have to do it better in order to move people along.
Up, down, inside out.
If you get your mind right,
it is not. It is a receiver of thought. Because love is my first technique.
it's now time for the show.
Welcome to the Mile High Podcast, your ticket to tick every Thursday. And I highly recommend that wherever you are listening to, whatever altitude you're at, you make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss any Mile High tick, whether it be Spotify or iTunes or whatever it might be. And then secondly, make sure that you know that you are at Mile High each year, and you can get the details about each year's event at riseuptomilehigh.com, where we look to see you on higher ground. So today I am super thrilled to have our guest. This year she is the Mile High Doctor Speaker winner. And Elizabeth Hoefer has been changing spines, lives, and minds for years. She was healed instantly from years of depression and anxiety after a single upper cervical adjustment. She spent every day since helping others find that same direction for their health. She's the founder and CEO of Well Connected Chiropractic in Mission Viejo, California. She's a certified Blair Technique Instructor. Also she's good friends, like close best buddies with Dr. Jane, which is phenomenal. So I didn't know that. I just found that out, that she was close to Jane Brewer. And she's a board member of the California Chiropractic Association. She's helping people, beyond the four walls of her office, which is, we like people doing great things in their office and doing great things beyond their office to help chiropractic. So thank you for joining us today, Dr. Elizabeth Hoefer.
It is my pleasure. And I think the most notable thing is that I'm Jane's bestie. That's what I want to be known for in the world.
I get it too. I'm really grateful that I get to be close with Jane as well,
Yeah.
So,
powerhouse. And truthfully, she's the reason why I was even introduced to the Mile High situation.
Really?
Because I come to Colorado so often to hang out with her. And it seems like every year you've been planning her a birthday party. So if I got to be there.
I know, right? Yeah, it's amazing. So we're going to have another birthday party for her. It's every single year. It's so funny that happens. So, and who else better for her to be around than, some, fired up chiropractors. So Amen. First of all, I've got to ask, tell a little bit more details about the, some people have life-changing chiropractic adjustments and then puts them in the direction of chiropractic school, and, some find chiropractic other ways. So you've got to share a little bit more about this unique chiropractic experience.
Well, I was a single mom. I was a teenage mom. I had my first child when I was 19, and I had absolutely no direction, and I had no vision for my future. But I was serendipitously raised in Davenport, Iowa. So I'm from the birthplace of chiropractic, and I grew up seeing a chiropractor. In Davenport, the options are plentiful. And I had the fortune of getting a part-time job working at the college until I figured out what I wanted to do with my life. And I had no idea that I wanted to be a chiropractor. I just knew I needed to have a job to provide for my child. And my dear friend, Kim Hutchison, was the director of the staff at Palmer College, and she slipped my application into the pile. I got the job on my own charming personality, and then quickly started to realize that there's more to chiropractic than just going in for an adjustment if you have a car accident or if you have a back pain. And I started to see the power and the potential of a career in chiropractic. Like I said, I was 19 when I had my child. I think I was 21 when I got the job at Palmer, and I made a whole whopping $6.19 an hour. And, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but being around the environment, as you kind of mentioned earlier, being in a place where people talk the tick and live the philosophy and are fired up and pumped about the potential to what we can do for the world really gave me some vision. And I started to investigate, what could I do? How could I be a part? And so at first it was simply the chiropractic technology degree. And that doesn't exist anymore, but it did then. And so it was like kind of fortuitous for me to be able to enroll in that program. I even got a filled scholarship because I was enrolled as somebody coming from the college as an employee, wanting to do more, wanting to understand how I could help support this incredible profession. And halfway through that program, I was like, well, maybe I want to know more.
Uh-huh.
And I just really fell in love with the idea of being able to help people. And at the same time, I struggled tremendously. I had a very, very, very rough childhood, riddled with abandonment and abuse and neglect and all kinds of wild stuff. But I had hope for the fact that I would see student doctors bring in people from the community in Davenport and 20 minutes later walk out like feeling amazing. And I was like, what is that? I don't think I ever had that kind of experience with chiropractic. I got to see a chiropractor because I played sports and because I got in car accidents and because my family were chiropractic patients. And so it was like a natural thing. Like I always say, at least for me and my family, we saw the chiropractor more than we ever saw a medical doctor or a dentist because it was just part of the ethos of our family.
Right.
And I think Bud Crowder might have had something to do with that because he is married to my great grandfather's aunt.
Oh,
So
wow.
it runs in the family. And so I just learned about the power of chiropractic through observation, through being an assistant, through helping facilitate the care for these students and for the patients in the community. And when I was still suffering tremendously, I recognize now that I was really dealing with, the effects of trauma and the effects of a dysregulated nervous system, but it was labeled as mental health issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
so I just kind of was like, Phil, I was fed a bill, and I didn't like that bill. And so thankfully, I've always had this very tenacity filled spirit, the spirit of like, yeah, that doesn't seem right. And I trusted my gut. And I just started going down the path of getting a better education because I had a daughter and because I knew that working for $6.19 an hour wasn't going to probably sustain me for the rest of my life. Thankfully, chiropractic has really, truly fed every area of my life, from my spirit to my physical health to my financial wealth. It's just been such a gift to me in my life. But that correction happened after I was already in chiropractic college. That beautiful
Oh,
Blair
wow.
correction. I was 1 year away from graduating from chiropractic
Uh-huh.
school. So I got my
Uh-huh.
CT degree, I got my Bachelor of Science degree, and I was 1 year away from graduating from chiropractic school, and I was slipping back into some very intense depression, anxiety, suicidal ideology. And my best friend in chiropractic school, Jackie Dukes, who's now Jackie Newhouse, her husband's a Blair chiropractor, she's a Blair chiropractor. They said, you haven't tried everything, you haven't tried Blair. And so you know, I kind of was a little hesitant because, I mean, I grew up in chiropractic care. Why didn't that other stuff work? And at the behest of an ultimatum, and it wasn't, I look back and I realize it was tough love and it was somebody speaking truth into my life when I needed to have truth spoke. And she's like, you haven't tried it all. You haven't tried Blair. And so I did it. I subjected myself to the student clinic, got all the x-rays, and thank God for the mind of Dr. Todd Hubbard and the hands of Dr. Kevin Leach, who is an amazing chiropractor in the Pacific Northwest. A student adjusted my atlas and changed my life.
Wow, so exciting.
Yeah,
I want to go down the road of that conversation about Blair and analysis because it's something that is very near and dear to me in a message of Mile High to make sure people are actually analyzing the spine and nerve system. But
absolutely.
before I do that, you one doctor speaker winner.
Yeah.
Um, what you've been to Mile High a handful of times,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay, how many times? I lost track.
Oh my gosh, I think it's been 2 or 3 times because, of Jade. So,
And what do you love about Mile High? Because we were talking about this a few days ago.
yeah, and I was reflecting on that because I really do feel like it's an amazing place that centers the art, the philosophy, and the science of chiropractic. From, from the main stage, you get the, rah, rah, let's feed our soul and let's remember our why and our purpose. But the breakout rooms that you have are completely filled and chock full of incredible science and like people doing amazing things. Last year, Jane did a talk on CBCT, which is something that I'm huge into. I got to participate and watch animal chiropractic happen, which I'm a very huge advocate for. In California, we're fighting for our chiropractors to have access to be able to do animal chiropractic without the oversight of a veterinarian, which is insane. Like, why are we still having this conversation? But we're
Right.
there. And so as a board member and, past president, whatever, president of Cal Chiro, I've been very interested in allowing access to what we get to do and under our full scope. So every single breakout that I've been a part of, all of the conversations that I've heard from the stage, they really truly do blend, in my opinion, the three legs of the chiropractic table.
Yeah, we really put a lot of energy and focus or intentionality in that. And one of the main parts of Mile High when I decided to do this was to make it a focus of strengthening chiropractic because I know they don't get enough chiropractic in their education. So I wanted a place where they can grow and learn things or inspired about things that they don't necessarily learn in chiropractic school and they should learn. And of course, there's always continuing growth after school, but they're not even getting the basis of it in school for many graduates. So, which
Sure.
is unfortunate. So, I read something the other day. It was an old green book that I was flipping through, and it said about, going, and this was, written in the 30s. So it's a long
Yep.
time ago. It's not like new thinking, right? And it was like people going up and down the spine, manipulating every joint is not chiropractic. It's really being musculoskeletal physical therapist. And I'm kind of afraid, I'm not saying exactly the quote, okay?
Yeah.
But that is something that is near and dear to me and why I have care less and less about whether, like I do network spinal, less and less that whether someone does Gonstead or network spinal or Blair or some other cervical approach as much as they just actually analyze the spine
Yeah.
in some way. And
Yeah.
they,
And they
you
have
know,
an approach and a science and a reasoning behind it instead of just
right,
like moving bones. Yeah, you're right. Because what does
right.
Jake Palmer say? He says chiropractic is specific or it is nothing. And so however you apply that science, at least have some measured, tested, and repeatable approach to doing so.
So I like celebrating and lifting up people that have some outcome assessment and are analyzing the spine and nerve system and determining where, when to adjust,
Yeah.
rather than just a fixation and I hear a pop.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with an audible, but it's just like, well, did you analyze with that? And
That's
guess what?
right.
If there's not an audible, it doesn't mean there wasn't an adjustment.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I encounter that a lot from people who have seen the more traditional chiropractic model and then they come to my office and I do that awesome Blair correction in the neck and there's no audible, there's no, click, pop, crack, and they're like, "Wait, what?" And I'm like, "Yeah, like remember when I showed you that blueprint, the 3D analysis that we did? This is what we're using as, and I call it like the Matterport of your spine. It's given me a tour of what your neck looks like and I get to be specific to your anatomy, which obviously for us makes all the difference in the results."
right, right. So let people know a little bit more about Blair, because
Yeah,
there are people listening to this and maybe just are somewhere along with a very musculoskeletal chiropractic education or
sure.
never learned anything about spinal analysis. What's unique or special about Blair analysis?
Well, again, it's an articular model, which means we're studying the joint itself. We're looking at where the facet joints come together on the side of the neck. What I love about Blair is that it does analyze the entire cervical spine. So you have 7 vertebra, which means you have 14 facet joints. And then of course the atlas and occiput joint is its own special animal. And so we have this really incredible in-depth analysis to look and see what is the actual presentation of that position of the joint. Has it gone forward? Has it gone backwards? Has it gone sideways? And kind of blending that torque kind of concept that BJ talked about, that you can't have a subluxation without a torque. You can't have it without a 3D malposition. And so when we study the joint and we harvest that person's anatomy and leverage them using our, analytical application, we really do and can unlock the stuck vertebra and untorque the torque and unsubluxate the subluxated, and then watch miracles occur. And the thing is, they're pretty predictable, and they're pretty regular. And so I think people like Jane, people like me, people like Michelle, people like Bill, the people that I really kind of like study with and go after this like specific analysis about, we are more kind of upset and frustrated by the people who don't respond. And we're like, what did we miss? And so we get to continue to study and learn and understand physiology and understand anatomy, neuroanatomy, all that kind of stuff. And that's why we're so driven to continue to improve that science and then publish what we find, right? So I think that there's nothing wrong with people who want evidence. And I think there's nothing wrong with people who want to affect the musculoskeletal system. And I think that we can all blend together and do it in such an incredible way that we all get to win. And ultimately, who wins is humanity. Because if we are constantly trying to improve ourselves to deliver the specific best possible opportunity for that body to unlock and open up, who wins? The freaking world wins. And that's what we need, okay?
Right, and that's what I value and appreciate about Blair so much. I mean, Rashawn and I studied Blair in school. It's been a long time. She was an officer in the Blair Club at school. I mean, we were very, very into it at that point and had gone up different levels of learning and certification and stuff like that way back then. But I so appreciate that 3D model. Now, how did it impact Blair when you went from the 3D imaging to the CBCT?
Sure. So we've always had the capacity to do 3D application because of the mirrored view box that BJ had like early on. He kind of came up with the concept of looking through these prisms and then creating a three-dimensional model by having this little tube shift in the original application on plain film. And what do they say? They say necessity is the mother of all invention, right? So we had a doc, an incredible human, Dr. Jake Hollowell, who had moved from, I think it was Northern California. He studied at Life West and under Dr. Tom Forrest, who is our patriarch and we absolutely love in our little tribe. He moved to a tiny little island in Italy. And in Italy, chiropractors aren't allowed to take x-rays. And so he had to meet with an imaging center and train those rad techs on how to take the Blair images, but he wasn't allowed to be there. So they would take a base posterior, they would send it to him, he would analyze, he would send it back, they would do the protractor views. But remember, they're not chiropractors and they're not thinking the way we think biomechanically. And it was clumsy and it was hard and it wasn't getting great results because they weren't being chiropractors. They were being rad techs applying a thing that they didn't understand. So somewhere along the way in the early 2010 area, Jake came across the cone beam CT through the dental world, right? And he realized that we could open up the field of view and actually capture most of the neck. And then he started to engineer the way that we apply the Blair analysis from this plain films or the digital x-ray to the cone beam CT. And then what's really beautiful is that it reconstructs a three-dimensional model so that all of a sudden you didn't have to imagine like looking through prisms what that joint looks like. You could see it. And it just amplified the ability for us to convey the message of like, look at that anterior shift of C2 on C3, or oh my goodness, can you see how that atlas is rotated high on the left and back on the right? And so it really did prove what BJ always knew innately and what Dr. Blair was able to kind of repeat through a repeatable application of science and study. It proved it and like regular like folk could see it. And so it really catapulted Blair to the next level as far as like us harvesting the most amazing technology and being able to make it a more accessible kind of technique to learn, because maybe you can't afford to buy a cone beam CT, or maybe it isn't offered in your state yet. There's a few states that we're working real hard at the legislative level to kind of allow chiropractors to own and have, but maybe you can, work with a dentist in your area. They could take the picture and then send that DICOM file over. And in seconds, you have access to the file and you can do the analysis. So it opened up the capacity for chiropractors to have access to high tech, but also not like have them have insane overhead when they first start practice. So it's been a beautiful thing to, over these last, 16 years or so, really embrace and train and give hope to these students that are leaving school with insane debt and maybe not a lot of confidence because they haven't been trained on technique or science or whatever. They can pass boards, and that's important to get a license. And so that's the bare minimum, right? Now we want to teach them how to be the art, the philosophy, the science of chiropractic. And so it's been a beautiful thing to be a part of the Blair Society in leadership and instructorship, and help have these students have a place to come out and practice too.
I'm really curious, and I don't know the answer to this, and I guess that's why I'm asking. With that advancement, did it make any changes to the analysis at all? Did you guys learn something different?
Oh, I think for the rest of our lives, I think the more we study, the less we know, right?
Right,
And
of
so
course.
I think basic application is still there, and that's always like primary. And I feel like you have to learn the basics to be able to then be an artist. So you can't start doing, if you're an ice skater, you can't start with like a triple axel if you can't even like skate backwards, right? So you
Right.
have to learn the basics and understand your body and on the ice and things. So in that regard, the basic analysis is still very much real, very much solid. But we now, all of us DCCJPs and people like Dr. Cameron Bearder, are understanding the shifts in the biomechanics and really challenging what has been known and what has been published, because up until this point, they didn't have 3D models to study. So we're
Right.
really changing the game in that. And I think that we're actually starting to publish and understand that what we thought was happening really isn't, because all of that stuff was done either in a static MRI or on cadavers, or, not in vivo, which means in living beings. And so now that we have the access with little radiation, we can go ahead and start to understand the change of biomechanics and possibly the change in how we do corrections.
So, how important is in the Blair world is instrumentation in the Blair world?
I mean, it's vital. We use a Titron scan and we establish pattern. And so we absolutely love instrumentation as far as like objective data. There is always an exception to the rule. So, the rule is we adjust with our piezoform in our hand.
Right.
But what if that patient can't like tolerate that? We have an
Right.
adaptation where we can borrow a KH, styloid from a different technique, or maybe an activator, or maybe we don't use a drop head piece and we just have them seated because they can't lay down because they're too dizzy. There is the ability to have the doctor use autonomy and use their clinical experience and their training and borrow, if you will. Now, does that take away from Blair? I don't think so. I think that it enhances the ability for us to critically think. And that's why I don't want to like pigeonhole myself into I only practice Blair and I only do a Blair adjustment at the Atlas. I want to take everything that I've learned and all of the exposure that I've had from the phenomenal doctors that I get to rub shoulders with, and the amazing people that I've learned from, and the giants on the shoulders of whom I stand, and take all of that and kind of press forward and lean forward into what's next. What can we do to help humanity? How can we improve the station of this human experience? So I don't want to throw anything out.
I think that's so important and so overlooked in chiropractic. When I went to Sherman, long time ago, that was one of the most beautiful things in analysis that I was introduced to. It's a center of network, and it's a center of so many things. Just that if the nervous system is ill, sick, when it's stuck, when it's in pattern,
Yep,
and that it's healthy or well when it's dynamic.
exactly.
And that was something that was the focus of what we learned for analysis at Sherman College. And sadly, people don't learn that in many educational experiences. I think it's such a central part to the art of chiropractic. It's sad that's not really being taught, because that is part of what separates it from musculoskeletal physical therapy.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, even if it's not being taught in school, I certainly am teaching it in my seminars when I instruct Blair chiropractors. Every single one of my interns are very acutely aware of how important establishing pattern is with Titron, with leg checks, with posture. And so, it may not be happening in the school for whatever reason, and I don't have the time, the capacity, or the energy to judge it. I just know what I get to do in my practice, and the difference that I get to make when people have their access to what I do, right? So,
Right,
it's cliche, but it's like, be the change you want to see, right? Like,
right,
I am going to constantly um do chiropractic in my
right.
practice, and I'm going to teach it because I want my great grandchildren's grandchildren to have access to the amazing care that I get to provide every day.
Right, and that's why I uplift that in Mile High, and I uplift it in the things I teach in network and
Yep.
other things and lifetime wellness practice. And I try to put on stage and center stage people that put that out in what they teach, because I feel it's vital for people to get introduced to that, regardless of what technique they're using, because it's such a central concept. And it's more than a concept, it's a reality, but it's
Yeah,
a central
absolutely.
part of chiropractic analysis, that if people are never learned that in school and did not get introduced to it somewhere in their first 5 years of practice, the price is the people that don't get care, that
Yeah.
humanity not getting that aspect of the analysis of their spine when they're a patient in an office.
Yeah, I've had the fortune of being able to, before COVID, it's a lot has changed, and it's unfortunate kind of in California. Before COVID, I was on the campus of LACC probably once a month. We had an
Hmm.
upper cervical club there, and I know that that sounds like, what, really? I'm like, yeah, there were so many incredible minds, so thrilled, and the leadership welcomed me. And partly is because of my relationships in Cal Cairo. So I'm superly heavily involved in the politics in California for a long time, like since I started my career, really. And because of my relationship with the people that don't practice like me, don't look like me, don't talk like me, but I respect them, and I make room for their practice. They welcomed me with love and with open arms, and they were like, please expand the minds of these students. And so I got the opportunity and the honor to go on campus a lot. I mean, at one point, I probably had like 15 interns from LACC. One of the most notable people who graduated from that school is Kevin Pecca, who has literally changed the world in social media with UC Senior Me. And now the world is opening up to, like, what is upper cervical chiropractic, where before we were little silos, and we've all done our work, and we've all had our reputation, and we've all made an impact, but he's taking it to another level, like globally. Like, people regularly from like Ireland and Dubai and Africa are like, well, how can I get a doctor? So, like, now literally the world is opened to be able to place doctors in places where never before has chiropractic ever even been known. you know Kevin was my intern. He was my first intern. And now he's literally changing the world. So, like BJ Palmer says, you never know how far, reaching something you say, think, or do could impact the lives of millions. And so, um, there's hope. And I have a lot of hope for the future. I know there's a lot going on. I know there's so much noise, and I just stay focused on the call, the mission, the why, and then make the next best choice for what you need to do for yourself, for your practice, for your people. And when you continually live in that presence, and when you continually live in that place of just really having a solid foundation of like what that call is, you're going to make an impact. You're going to change the world.
Yeah, and this is why at Mile High I always make sure to uplift that in different analysis camps, but people need to be exposed to that area, 'cause it's central to chiropractic philosophy, science, and art. You know,
Absolutely.
and again, I don't feel it gets enough attention, and it's where we can make a difference in how people see chiropractic and then the care that they end up delivering in their community. Is there any last thing that you'd like to share with the chiropractors and chiropractic students and teams that will watch this or listen to this?
don't don't get discouraged by the negative, because the world is always going to throw that at you. Our amygdalas, they're designed to kind of detect threat. And if all you ever focused on was danger, you would never move away. You would never leave your house. But, focus on that feeling inside of your heart. There was a reason why you were called to this incredible profession. And no matter what the reason was, whether you thought maybe you could be a part of healthcare and you didn't even have that life-changing correction. I mean, I saw promise in it because of vicarious, observation. And then I got to have my own personal experience. And maybe you never have a life-changing correction personally, but you can certainly educate about it. You can certainly deliver it someday. Always remain connected to the innate understanding that we have the capacity to heal. The power that made the body heals the body. And if you tap into that, you're unstoppable.
Absolutely. I agree 1,000%. So, again, I'm really glad that you entered the contest, the doctor contest, and won. Very
Yeah.
excited that you are part of Mile High so many years. And again, thank you so much for helping so many people change more spines, lives, and minds with chiropractic.
It's my pleasure. And thanks for helping me bring my message to the world.
And remember where you want to be each fall, higher ground, riseuptomilehigh.com.
Yeah.